Yes, I have. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I did.
Just, it even gave me food for thought. So it was, I thought, oh, very
No, it is.
apt.
It is interesting, isn't it? But it just shows you that there's as many different. The thought that went through my mind is that obviously different students. It's that same thing again. As different students operate in a different way, and while some really appreciated one certain type of feedback, others didn't. So it's very much. My take on it was, as somebody giving back feedback, you need to identify with the learner what type of feedback they actually want and how they want it.
And
Because,
when you're profiling your students or you're having individual interviews with them, we read the research and we listen to what people say, but it actually comes down to individuals and the variability and their particular needs.
Yep.
So they may say that this is the best way to do it, but actually
it's going to depend on the learners as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Individuals. Yep.
And that's part of that, working out your learner needs.
Yes.
Which I thought was very, very apt. Yeah,
Yep.
sorry, Trish, flashing on quietly.
That's okay. I was just thinking I'll stop you before you sort of launch into the third part of the tutorial.
Have a habit of doing that.
Yeah, I'm pulling you back. So what we're going to look at today is, and Karen, this is not the second time that you've been on your own in a tutorial, so I appreciate. We're going to look at, the differences between what is feedback and what is feed forward. We're going to have a look at some of the of what we think are the important principles of feedback and feed forward, and then sort of what is effective feedback. So that's where I was just going to stop you both there, because you're kind of looking at that third point. I have put up the link to the Google Doc under the conversation on the left-hand side. Has that come up for everyone?
It has, yep.
Okay, so if you go into that, I'll also share my screen at the same time.
Yep.
Okay, and once we go in, we want the seventh box down there, providing effective and meaningful feedback.
Yep.
We can click into that. And then we have one of our favourite little, isn't that terrible, gone black, Padlets, because they work so well when there's a whole group. So I'm quite happy to type as well. What is there a difference? I mean, there's sort of words that have really been thrown around now. We do talk about giving feedback, and then there's also feed forward that has been spoken about. Is there a difference between feedback and feed forward? Is there not? Are they the same thing? What are your thoughts on what is feedback? If we look at feedback first, what are some descriptions of what is feedback, or what are your thoughts on feedback?
My thoughts on that is that feedback, you are talking about something that has already been done. So you're commenting on what has, say, been written or what has been presented. And I would then see feed forward as taking it that next step and saying it's like, this is what you've done, now this is what you could do to improve on that.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
So we say, so it's giving advice how to move forward?
Yes, yeah. It's kind of that next step.
Yeah. Next step. That's good.
And I'd see it a little bit like the feed forward as being more as a mentor rather than a facilitator.
Okay.
So looking for, because when sometimes we give feedback and people say use the feedback sandwich.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you get that lovely, oh wow, this is fantastic. Oh, but the actual content was crap. And looking forward to your new and updated version. And you know that that's the sandwich that you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's good. And that is a constructive way of actually really giving feedback. But what you're saying is that it needs to be feeding forward as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. You know what you're saying with feeding forward. It's giving advice on how to move forward. It's looking at those next steps. And Jeanette, I put in there. You said mentoring, and I put in coaching as well. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do actually. Because it's when we give feedback, as Karen said, we comment on the things that have gone before. It's retrospective.
Yeah.
But it's not a natural thing to provide feedback where we're giving opportunities. So that's sometimes when we give formative feedback, we do that.
Yeah.
But when we have summative feedback, in thinking about that video, we're inclined to just go good, bad, ugly.
Yeah.
But we don't often offer a lot of feedback on next time you do this.
So, you know, it's interesting because I'm thinking of for me, and if I've understood these two terms correctly, then I'm just thinking about when I was doing, you know, writing and doing master's papers and writing essays, and I hadn't written, you know, it had probably been about 5 or 6 years when I started doing master's papers after my bachelor's degree, and you kind of, you know, you get out of that habit of writing. And so I can recall writing, you know, writing this essay, and then the information that came back is the content of what was written was good. There was no problem with that. But what I needed to do next time was to be able to link each of those, you know, like your paragraphs to each other. So like the finishing line of one paragraph links in with the next one. So to me, that is feed forward.
Yeah,
because what I had written was fine, you know, and they were commenting on what I'd written, but this is actually what I needed to do to improve my actual writing style, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. I'm going to write you how to improve. It is. It's identifying, it's identifying where you are now and how to move to the next step.
How to move it, how to take it forward. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, the feedback is really, it's looking at your current performance. It's kind of, you know, showing the learner where they are in relation to the learning objectives or the learning outcomes, you know, the goals for learning. And as we said before, it identify gaps. One of the, sorry, I've just got a little visitor in my room. And it can also, you know, boost confidence. I think sometimes, you know, as we start to look and compare feedback and feed forward, we sort of start thinking, oh, you know, okay, well, feedback is one thing and feed forward is better because it's really going to show you how, you know, how you can improve, how you're going to, you know, constructive guidance really to improve. Whereas, you know, your feedback can still, you know, highlight students' strengths and can boost confidence.
Yeah.
And another thing I quite like about, you know, feedback, and exactly what you were saying as well, Karen, you know, you'd written your first essay, you know, at a whole different level and after a period of time. So you were impressed with the information that you got back, and it proves that the teacher has read your work and observed your work and does have expertise in the area. That's right. So you know, it's nice for the learner as well to ensure that, you know, you've got confidence in who your tutor is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And quite often, I mean, I write all over things and I make lots of comments, but I know that I've seen marking where people have marked to a marking schedule, and when you read the assessment or get it back, you can see how the student would get quite defensive. You've left this point out, how were you going to do X without Y?
Yeah.
And not little stimulation points about, have you thought about X or A, B, and C before
Yep.
you do D, E, and F, and that might make it easier next time
Yep.
you do it, those sorts
Yep.
of things, which is quite simplistic, but
Yep.
student.
So is it then that one is more important than the other?
No, see, I think the one without the other, there's something missing. So I can see the benefit of having both, reaffirming what you've done or not done, and then where to go next.
Agree.
It's kind of a bit like reflection, really, isn't it? You know, you're reflecting on what you've done and what you're doing, and then where you're planning to go next. It's just, it's just one without the other. Otherwise, it's very, it's stilted and it's stopped. And okay, so it's that. So what? All right, you've told me that. So what?
And without the feed forward, you've got no what now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it does. I completely agree that together. It enables reflection, the ability to reflect, and gives a developmental impact on a person's learning.
Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning. Sorry, I've had some technical issues at my end.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
So, could you use feed forward only when giving written feedback, or can you use feed forward when in a clinical setting or a practical setting?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. Well done.
The both.
Yeah.
I think probably in a practical setting is even better because it's more right now, it's easier than writing it down as such.
Yeah, it's more natural.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's very true as well. It is immediate feedback. Or feed forward, and also that actually brings us to nice segue kind of brings us into the next part, where if I just drop out of the screen, which I always find so difficult because I can never find my way around. Let's drop you down. Silly me. Sorry, if you're watching my screen, you'll be feeling quite sick by now.
We'll go away and make a coffee and come back.
No. Hilarious.
I could do that. I've got power now.
Yeah.
I'm at home on my day off.
So am I, and we've got 100k wins. It's just revolting.
Oh no.
Can't open any doors in our house.
Oh no. Hang on to the hillside.
Yeah.
Under our Padlet, you'll be able to see in red text, there's the principles on feedback, feed forward.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If you could open that up for me, please. So looking at, what are principles, what are your beliefs on giving feedback and feed forward? And I'm just going to pick up on what Rachel said, with it being immediate. Especially if you are doing a practical, you're watching what somebody's doing, and if you can give immediate feedback that's relevant to what they're doing at that time, is hugely important. So I'm just going to write down immediate as one of our principles. So what do you feel is a basic truth, or and what's important when you're giving feedback and feed forward?
I guess, I don't know, whether putting pointers as to how to do things perhaps better as you go.
Sure.
And I guess learning things that you've done over the years that there's sort of good tips to add in. I don't know, in a practical sense, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I like that. So it's almost relating it like an anecdotal story, relating it.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
It makes it more real life too, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
It does.
Yep.
Great. Like it. Any other principles that you feel, if you were putting yourself into the position of being a learner and gaining feedback, what would be important to you? And almost reflecting back to the video that Jeanette guided you to yesterday.
I always, or whether it's, that whole thing, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's written or whether it's a combination of both. And so assigning a time where you can actually sit down and go through it.
Yep, that's great.
Would you suggest a one-on-one for that?
Yes. Yeah.
I guess there's that feeling whether that's an essential, like should be part of it, or whether that's just for certain people. But then when you go back to the video we watched, then everyone felt that they should be treated equally as such. So even the goods need the good pat on the back. Whereas with the not so goods, you need to be able to, they need that feedback because there's issues.
That's what we were just talking about before you came on, Rachel, about individual needs of our learners. Some of those people in that video filed their feedback and never looked at it, but others had or would have appreciated just 5 minutes
that's right.
to go through it, or even be given the opportunity. Some will just say no, but others will definitely benefit from it.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick up on what you said there, Rachel, and say constructive.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So we've got that it's immediate, that it's actually relating to real life and can be backed up with an anecdotal story, that you give time to go through the feedback, that it is constructive. It's not just, great, high five, off you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I read an assessment was marked for me recently, and it was the person had sort of underlined all the points within the assessment where they'd written what they were supposed to write, and then the feedback at the end was very technical. There was nothing personal, whereas I tend to be quite personal with my feedback sometimes too. Like, I love this, I don't know, and I never quite know where the boundaries are.
Right. That's fair enough. How can we write that? How would you want me to put that down?
I don't know. I mean, I guess that's learner orientated. It probably direct. If you know your learners well, then you probably can write your feedback in such a way that it's focused the way they want it to be. I don't know.
Delete that if I've got it wrong.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
What else would be important to you? You've actually got a really solid list here. There is another link on this, and I'll read through this, and you can have a look at it later. You'll see underneath the red text there's another link that says, principles of feedback, feed forward, and it's in blue. So I'll let you look at that in your own time.
Okay.
And it does actually sort of give quite a solid explanation of each point. But they have 6 principles that have been given from the University of Sheffield that have done a lot of work on what they see as important when giving feedback to their learners. Principle 1 is that student engagement with feedback is promoted. So, and it's almost, I think, what you said here, that it's that sitting down, it's having a conversation, it's engaging with the feedback, and it's kind of creating a bit of a dialogue with your learners so that they are understanding what the feedback is. I think your thoughts align to what the University of Sheffield has stated. Principle 2, they state feedback is for learning, and really I see that as your constructive. Plus it's also really relating to real life and relating to their learning.
Yeah, that's important, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Some of the questions they may have got wrong, and they just think, why do I need to know this?
Yeah.
You know, if we can sit down and relate it back to something in the industry that we've, you know, discovered along the way, and that we needed that to be related to that, then you know, that makes so much more sense, and it'll probably help them to answer that question if it is a resubmit or something.
Absolutely. And that kind of, you know, because you're sort of storytelling, you know, you're not being lectured at, that you've got that engagement and you've got that real understanding. And, you know, I sort of love, you know, like that Ron Bull, you know, sitting and listening to his tutorial. It's all a story, but wow, it just stuck in my head.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I did the Treaty of Waitangi with Ron just after we did that tutorial, and 2 days of that, not once did I feel kind of bored or, you know, not want to be there. I was just engaged constantly.
Thank you, Rachel.
He's amazing.
He is amazing.
The University of Sheffield say that Principle 3 is feedback is clearly communicated. So we have said that you know, it's direct, it's personalised to the learner. So I think, you know, I see that within there. Principle 4, they say, is timely, and bang, you got immediate, you know, straight away, especially if somebody is doing, you know, something hands-on, and you can, you know, correct them, guide them, coach them, you know, straight away. It's fantastic. Principle 5, they say, is that it's being constantly delivered. So, you know, that the learners will know that they will be getting feedback consistently. It's not just every time they do a written assignment and then there's nothing else for the rest of the year. That you're going to be getting it, and it's going to relate to learning outcomes and to assessments. And then Principle 6, they say that the quality is maintained. So it's ensuring that your feedback is of good quality. And again, I see that within your, you know, when you stated that it's constructive, you know, that it's relating to real life, and that it's direct and personalised.
The other thing, Trish, that with feedback is it should be a two-way process. Where, well, feed forward really, where the student can actually engage with the dialogue that has been given to them. Not just a one-way process where the facilitator or lecturer is setting the scene.
Yeah, great. So, oops, I can't spell. How then? So we've said, okay, so that's a great start. I can't type. How to give?
Problem yesterday.
Oh, I have it every day. I never took typing at school. I took French. Where did that get me?
What's wrong with him?
I can say my name in French. So how then, and I'm going to put down, you know, that you said it was a two-way process to encourage dialogue. How do you give effective feedback? So, Jeanette, you've started it.
Yeah.
How do you get that dialogue? How do you ensure that you're getting some dialogue from the learner? What would be some strategies to give effective feedback to our learners? So if you want a two-way process, you want conversation, how are you going to go about that?
So we want our learners to be engaging in the feedback, and it will give us two-way process gives us an indication that our learners have actually engaged in the feedback, not just filed it.
Yeah. So a two-way process is going to create their time. So ensuring they're engaged, how?
You could always suggest that they have some questions that they, you know, you arrange a meeting and then to bring some questions that they want specific answers to. Maybe, you know, if the feedback has been sent out and then you, you know, create time to then sit down with them. So if they've got some questions that they can then talk to you, then at least you know as well that they have actually taken on board what has been said.
Fantastic. Definitely. You could also, I like that, that's great. So give them their feedback, come back with some questions, create time for some open dialogue.
Yep.
We need to be careful with the two-way process, because some of our learners haven't had a good experience or good experiences within the educational journey to date. So it's quite important for us as facilitators to set the scene in the learning environment right from the beginning of when we start teaching our learners, not just sort of drop it in after an assessment, because they may feel that this could be a negative experience. So the way we give feedback in the class, or feed forward in the class, and the way we respond to giving formative feedback, I think it's quite important that we've already demonstrated that the sort of feedback that we're going to be giving, and that it will be positive, enabling of improvement. It'll be it won't create that defensiveness that sometimes our learners have, or we have when we get an assessment back before we open it up. Yeah.
So how could you ensure that would happen then? If you're going to be up front and, you know, rather than just saying, look, I'm going to give you feedback on your assessment, blah, blah, how could you be more upfront about it? Could you make it more learner-led?
So get the learners to possibly identify first, is that what you're saying, that some areas, or not necessarily peer review, but self-review of some work that they've done?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that they've actually got an idea where that they think their own strengths and weaknesses are.
Love it. So you could ask them what they want feedback on.
Yep.
And the strengths and weaknesses. Love it. Strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to snatch that one because I think that's really, really important. Years ago when I was studying at Waikato and I was teaching, I created a strength-based interview for my learners. And so the idea, it was a one-on-one interview, but I wanted them, well, I sat with them and I pointed out their strengths. So I noted their achievements, I pointed out, you know, their strengths, and I used those sort of as a base to develop growth. And then I asked them what they felt they needed to improve on, or what they felt, you know, that they needed, not so much their weaknesses, but because I tried to, you know, not go in with that language, but definitely.
But areas for further development or something.
Yeah, what areas they need further development. And then, you know, if they said, for example, you know, I'm not good at making icing, then I would get them to rate from 1 to 10 what they saw their icing creating skills were.
Sure.
And then let's work together. How are we going to work together to improve that? And so it put the onus on them the whole way, and it gave them a lot of power, and they got quite excited about how they were going to improve.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
And sometimes turning that word around to challenges rather than weaknesses is quite a nice word. What aspects of this assignment did you find challenging as a nice way of identifying weaknesses? It's all semantics, isn't it?
Yeah, and I never used that word, and it was always, and I never gave them a solution. You know, I would help them, but it was up to them to create a plan of how they were going to focus on what they needed to focus on. So, no, I love that. That was a great point. Well done. And, you know, ask them what they want feedback on. It's huge. Any other points of giving effective feedback?
And I think what we were talking about at the start, Trish, how they want their feedback.
Absolutely.
Traditionally, if it's an assessment, we write it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Or if it's a practical, would the learner prefer to have feedback as they go? Because they know you're engaged, or they prefer you to say nothing until the end.
Yeah.
Written.
So is that something that's constantly going to change, isn't it? So I'm just thinking, doing a practical, if you're doing a one-on-one practical with a student, you need to talk about that before you do the practical, don't you?
And that's you getting to know the student.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a practical, some they can't concentrate on two things at once.
Yeah, that's right.
They just
and if
really
you're
want to
just
focus.
chipping in all the time trying to give little pointers and so on, then that might just completely blow them. But others, need that sort of constant support.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Any other effective pointers? How are you going to ensure that they're using this feedback and engaging with it?
I don't know. I guess if you're doing if you're doing your feedback and they do have a reset to do, then you're going to review it all, aren't you, after the reset's been done, to make sure that the feedback has worked as such.
Yeah, definitely.
Could you ask them to write a one-paragraph review of how they feel they could, if they had to do this assessment again, where what improvements could be made?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Taking whole responsibility for their assessment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what you were talking about at the start, Karen, where you were given feedback about how to set up your essay.
Yep.
If you were asked, what could I do to improve for future essays, you could have articulated that straight away and got a real positive from that feedback.
Yeah. And it was a real positive, because that just set it up for the rest of it was kind of a fundamental it just established that whole essay writing right from the very beginning, which was good.
So what about the use of crosses, ticks, a smiley face? How do you feel? Is that feedback or feed forward?
I think
that's feedback. I would have thought that's feedback, because you're relating that. Well, I suppose it depends. It depends on what context. If they're talking about something that they've written and then where they're planning to take that further, then I guess it's both, because not only are they identifying what's happened, but also where they're going to go with it. So,
So is ticks, crosses, and a smiley or a smiley face, is that a two-way process? Could that be?
Because you're identifying that they've done what they've done well, I guess, or correctly. But it's also, in some cases, it's continuing the positivity. It's a feel-good thing, isn't it, for them?
Yeah. So how did you used to feel when you got a big cross on a
Yeah, true. I don't tend to cross, I tend to tick.
With no words. It's what comes after the cross or what comes after the tick.
Yeah.
Walking in the shoes of our learners. So if I'm marking one of your assessments and I put excellent, would you appreciate why I thought it was excellent? Or would you just be appreciative of the fact that I've acknowledged that I thought it was an excellent comment?
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because if I write excellent, I really mean it. But they might just think that it's just, I'm just throwing some words around, It doesn't mean anything, does it? But if you've written excellent because you've put this blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And that could be a little more affirming. I mean, an excellent or a brilliant or well done is affirming.
Yeah.
But brilliant, well done, how can you improve on brilliant, well done? If you're reflecting on your assessment after you've got your comments from your lecturer. I'm being contentious, aren't I?
Food for thought. Food for thought's good.
But I think you can probably still say something, excellent or well done, but with a little comment as well about where that can go. Because I think you're acknowledging what they've actually said. But I think with anything, there's always room for improvement. You can always do something else, try something else, think about something else. So you can always, so that in itself, saying, look, that's great, fantastic comment, excellent comment. How do you then, a little comment, how could you then see this going forward, or something, depending on obviously what it's relating to, but just so that they feel really good about what's being said, and okay, so now I just need to take my learning that next step.
Yeah, because you're extending their knowledge. And that's hugely important. And as a facilitator, it's the asking of the questions to extend thought in another direction. So, no, brilliant, agree.
And the other thing we need to think about is that a large number of our learners now are studying online or via distance, and being able to provide feed forward as a lecturer, it could be the only time that we ever have a connection with that student. We may only see them 8 days a year.
Yep.
In some of the programs, and this is an opportunity to really provide your learner with some boosting comments, ability to be able to improve on what they've done, and to acknowledge the good things that they're doing.
Yeah.
So would you say, I'm just going to extend on what you're saying there, Jeanette, that you're talking about, what they're doing well, and, where they could improve possibly. So a question on that is, how many, would you give a whole raft of feedback in someone's assignment, or would that be overwhelming? How much is enough? How much is too much?
I know what we used to do in our school. However, we used to give lots of feedback because our students only saw facilitators twice a year.
Right.
And that was a way for us to be able to help students. However, if we were marking an assessment and the tables were turned where there was a lot of too much, you need to improve, or have you thought about this, have you thought about that, we would be more inclined to ring the student and ask for a time where we could go through their assessment.
Okay.
Because to just receive something back from Moodle with a lot of comments that could be perceived as negative, or the content was wrong, can be quite destructive to a student.
That's what I was just thinking when you said that. Could you pick a certain amount of areas for what they've done well, and a certain amount of areas for what a learner needs to concentrate on?
Yeah. So, I think that's a great idea.
So you could choose key areas for development, and key areas for, for positive comments.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings in that sandwich that you were talking about before as well, the sandwich feedback.
You have to be really careful with that feedback sandwich, because as soon as you say however or but,
it ignores everything that's gone before.
It negates everything that you've said. Yeah, it does.
No, it can be difficult. Definitely can be difficult. There's another one I did read about, and just your thoughts on it will be quite interesting. Is some universities have actually played with giving say it's a theory assessment, giving the feedback before they give the mark. Because often, you'll grab your paper and you're like, B+, phew, and you don't even care about the feedback because you passed and it's done and I'm moving on. So some universities are sort of playing with, right, we'll give the written feedback, and then they ask the learners from that feedback to pinpoint what their grade may be, and then come back and have, you know, a conversation where, you know, they might say, oh, from all that feedback you gave me, I think I've got a C-. Whereas you can sit with them and say, well, actually, this is what you did get, because, you know, blah, 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 blah. Often learners can be harder on themselves. So, you know, it's a real way of getting them to think. With a big class, it's going to be tough. You know, again, just that time. But, you know, it is one way. And another way that universities have been playing with is to sometimes get people, is almost get the learners to self-critique or self-feedback before submission. So they've written their assessment, and then they might do a little blurb at the bottom. I really think this is a B- because I had a sick child and I had this and I had that and blah, blah, blah at the same time. I wasn't on my best game. So, you know.
One of the things we did in VET and still do, Trish, is we ask the students to rate how hard they felt the assessment was, and along similar lines, the time that they'd spent on the assessment, the time they'd spent in the resources, and whether they thought they'd given it 100%. It was quite interesting, the feedback that you got. So if you got an assessment from somebody that was usually really good and you were marking it thinking, what the hell is going on here? And then you got to the end of it and then there was their review. Yeah, it's quite interesting, some of the stuff that came out.
So there are, you know, what you've all created are some, you know, really good ways to ensure that there is engagement with feedback. You know, and it sort of just gives us, there has been studies that have shown that for learners to reflect on their feedback, it gives huge improvements for both the learner and the teacher.
Yeah.
So again, it's that reciprocated learning together, and using that feedback to really improve upon their learning.
Yeah.
So there could be some fun stuff that we've come up with here that we could actually, you know, have a go and see if we can actually get more engagement of feedback. I know when I've done assignments, and especially if it's summative, and you're like, great, done, passed, and, you know, barely go back and look at it. So there's definitely, I find it a hugely important area to be looking into to ensure that we do get engagement. And another thing is, just while I'm thinking, is prioritising the feedback, ensuring that, you know, this is important stuff, guys. You need to listen, and especially as you were talking earlier about, you know, being immediate. I see you doing something, you know, right here and right now. It could be worth saying, what I'm telling you now is some feedback or feed forward. You know, so just prioritise it as you're going through.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be important to let learners know the difference between feedback and feed forward?
No.
Because if you're a learner, do you know the difference?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say as well.
Yeah. So if you're going to use feed forward, would you be articulating to the students what the difference is in the two and the expectations of them with feed forward?
See, I wonder whether students just would naturally, I mean, I don't know, and this is you know, I'm the newbie into all of this, but my feeling is that the expectation that students would have of feedback is that it is feedback and feed forward combined. Like I would just naturally expect, if I'm handing something in, that I'm getting feedback, that what's coming back to me is commenting on what's been done, but also where you can go with that. That's just what I would naturally expect.
But we go back if we go back to the video,
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
those kids said that they looked at the mark and filed it.
Yeah.
Some said they never went back and
Never
looked
went
at it.
back. Yep.
So
Yeah.
how do we circumvent that happening? And I'm wondering whether it would be beneficial to the students to know that there's two types of feedback we're going to give you, or I'm going to give you.
Right. Yep.
One is retrospective, one is about what's gone in the past, but the other is about improvement and how we can get you to reflect or think about what it is that you've done to lead to improvement.
Yep.
Because when we think about the ages of our students from 18 to 50, had we ever thought of the term feed forward before today or yesterday?
No.
So do you think that would be beneficial to your students to be able to utilise something that you're providing to be enabling for them if they don't actually understand what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
Good thinking.
No, that makes good sense.
So when you look at the feedback that Trish and I will give you going forward,
We're going to be critiquing the feedback and the feed forward.
Facebook or future feed forward.
No pressure.
I'll go back to that comment. It's good for the teacher as well. Always happy for feedback. What did my neighbour say? Feedback's always good. It's just how you take it.
We always used to say feedback is a gift. And how you choose to take that gift, same theme, Trish, yeah?
Yeah.
All feedback is a gift. Those big undies that your granny gave you.
So, do we feel like we have, had a good look at what is feedback and feed forward and identify the differences with the two and where the two complement?
Yeah.
Sorry?
I've probably got a few questions, just probably maybe after you've finished recording whatnot, but
Sure.
I don't know, just we're thinking about, you've got a pile of 20 assignments to mark. And it's easy just to sit down and go through one after the other, and then you get to the end and go, okay, now I need to do the feedback. Like when you're marking a pile of assignments as such, do you, like I'm just thinking these are smaller unit standard assessments that need a good amount of feedback. Do you individually write up your feedback after each one that you've marked? Or, I'm giving constant feedback through the assignments, as in notes and writing and little ditties, interesting bits to add.
Then
but
I
that's the bit
summarise
that
it.
gets to me sometimes. As I often will sit in the evening and mark, and then I'll go, oh, crikey, now I need to do feedback. The piece of paper that goes on the front at the end, what do you call it? Marking sheet. Yeah. So would you tend to do that as you go?
I do.
Yeah.
Personally, I do, or else I'll forget.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so, I'll take one person's piece of work and, write comments all the way through and then summarise those comments at the end.
And
it's tricky because it's often quite focused on the questions that they need to resubmit in my world.
True.
So there needs to be a lot more going on, a lot more feedback, a lot more positivity, and a lot more feed forward, as well as you need to redo these questions.
Yeah. What you need to do to pass straight away.
Yeah, there's a third aspect to that, Rachel, is that writing comments as you go, and how to improve, what was really good. Summarise those key points at the end, as you pointed out, strengths and challenges. But the other thing that we used to do was at the end of an assessment, we used to put a note on Moodle about the strengths that the whole class showed. And about the areas where they could possibly think about improving and giving some little tips on how to do that.
Sort of general feedback to the whole class.
So they get individual feedback in relation to each question. They get a summary in relation to that assessment, but then as a class, they get class feedback on the assessment.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And it might take another 15 minutes, but actually, as learners, we don't, particularly in the distance field, we don't always know where we sit in comparison with others.
Yeah.
You know, in the old days, you used to line up and look for your student number and you'd get your mark.
Yep. Yep.
Whereas when you're a distance learner, you get your assessment, you've got your feedback, your feed forward, but you don't really know how well you did in comparison with the rest of the class. And that little paragraph at the end that we always give to the students on Moodle after the assessment was finished, we always got some really positive feedback about that from our distance learners. And it's not only your distance learners, it's your face-to-face ones as well.
Yep. Yep.
And we used to do that after block courses. We would comment on the strengths of the class, what they were really good at, some ways that they could improve to make them better, faster, stronger, but also the things that we'd like them to focus on so that by the next block course or for assessment on diagnostics or anaesthetics, they were pre-primed.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't know if that helps at all.
No, that's cool.
Yep. Yeah, that's good.
We've covered some principles of what we see that are important, when giving feedback and feed forward, and then just some strategies that we might take away with us in giving effective feedback to our learners. Do we feel that we have covered those learning objectives today?
Yeah, it's good.
So my question would be, what's one thing that you would do differently if you were going from the tutorial now to mark a bunch of assessments?
I am.
You don't need to imagine then.
No.
Tell us what you're going to do.
Well, certainly to have myself a marking cover sheet happening as I go, more so. I think I'll probably tend to do a handwritten one, adding to it constantly, and then pull it together as a typed up one. For such a final.
If you're marking on
You've gone all quiet on me.
You've disappeared.
Me or you?
If you're marking online, ladies, are you aware of some software called Dragon?
No.
Dragon? No.
What Dragon does is you can actually talk to your computer and it writes the feedback down so you don't get a really sore arm or really sore fingers. So as you're reading something, you can actually, it's all set up to match your voice. It's not expensive. We all had it, or used to have it, and it's fantastic because as you're reading it, you can give feedback or feed forward, and it just writes it onto the assessment wherever you put the cursor.
Wow.
Yep.
Time saver.
Yeah, it's just called Dragon, and I'm pretty sure that if you told your head of school that it's going to save you so much time and you're going to be much more efficient, that they might invest in it for you.
Excellent.
I'll find the link for it.
That's really good. Do you know what? It's really interesting. Just last weekend, I was having a conversation with some friends, and actually Dragon software came up then because he's a like an occupational health consultant, and he was saying, he just uses Dragon to, instead of typing up all his reports. Yeah. And we were thinking it in line because we've got 2 children with dyslexia, and we were thinking, oh gosh, that would be a really good way for them to be able to get their thoughts on paper. So it's funny that you've just actually brought this up, because I didn't actually think, I didn't make that next connection about bringing it forward to what I was doing. So that's great. It's
fantastic. Except if you pick up Audrey's Dragon and you try and mark something, and she's got a very broad accent, and what I said came out completely different to what. So
it has to be individualised Dragon software to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't take very long to do it, but it's a magnificent tool, and it saves a lot of time.
Great.
That sounds fabulous.
Good insight. Thank you, Jeanette.
Well, that's what I will be taking away to do next.
I have to be really rude and go. It's been really nice chatting with you ladies. And Trisha, is this our final tutorial or do we have one more?
What we have next week is a bit of an open session. So
Okay.
there's no true tutorials as such, but Jeanette and I will be face-to-face Monday afternoon and back on next Friday morning. If there's any queries, if there's any questions, if there's anything anybody wants to talk about of the assessments, then it's just kind of a touch base to have us to yourselves.
And there won't be a latte session next Wednesday because I will be flying to Wellington.
Okay, cool. Yes.